Hi, my name is Gene Torres, and I am a Veeam Data Cloud for Microsoft 365 and Entra ID Specialist Engineer. And today we're going to go over a demo for our one user interface, specifically for the workloads that we have highlighted here, which are Microsoft 365 and Entra ID, and how those are managed, configured, and used for recovery ultimately. First thing I want to point out is what you see here is at a single login, which is cloud.veeam.com. When you connect, you're going to use your Microsoft Entra ID credentials, which leverage your existing MFA, condition access policies, etc. So first thing you're going to notice is that there is no user configuration in terms of creating a new directory of users and groups. All of this is going to rely on your existing user base for delegation. Now, in order to do delegation, especially at the scale that we are providing a platform for cloud-based protection, it makes a lot of sense for all the permissioning and all the delegation to be controlled at the top layer, which is the page we're looking at here. In order to manage that, we're going to click on the cog icon and go into roles. And from here, the first thing we'll see is there are some system roles that have been created as well as custom roles. So aside from anything that has been delivered as the creation of your subscription or as a part of it, you're going to be able to create custom roles. And when I say custom roles, I'm talking about delegating operational recovery duties to maybe a service desk or a help desk technician, whereas you don't want your backup admins to be fielding tickets all day. So in order to do something like that, you can create a role called the help desk example, and we can list that we want the help desk to be able to do recoveries on behalf of users for SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, and Outlook. And we only want them to restore the data back to the original location. So if a user requests an email be restored, it's going to go right back to their original mailbox. If a user requests to have a SharePoint document restored, it's going to go back to the SharePoint site that it came from as well as their OneDrive. So this will allow you to really dial in exactly based on roles, who has access to do what, reserving higher level or more critical handling of data to administrators or just higher level engineers, including downloads. So downloading data can be seen as a potential security risk in terms of critical data that has been backed up being recovered by someone who has been delegated access. So you might want to keep this disabled and reserve it for maybe your administrators or someone authorized to be able to download data, especially if we're dealing with environments that are highly regulated or a lot of sensitive or critical data that should not be leaving the organization. So this kind of prevents any of that from happening in terms of getting it from the backup data. Once you create your role, you can then assign to your users that role that you've just created by inviting them and then adding the role to their account. So for example, if I wanted to invite someone to be an Entra ID administrator, I can select that role here and I can specify whether or not I want to give them access to all my workload tenants for Entra ID or selected workload tenants. So you can also scope this down specifically to where it matters for specific people. All right, moving back to our main dashboard, we'll click into the Microsoft 365 solution, and the first page that we're going to see is the tenant screen. So this out of the gate shows me that we do have the capability to be able to manage multiple tenants under one license pool, which is great because we do have a lot of customers who end up growing through acquisition, and a part of those acquisitions may mean that they're inheriting a Microsoft 365 tenant that they do now have to back up or protect if it's not being protected. So you can onboard as many tenants as needed in any region and manage them all from this interface. It takes about 5 minutes to onboard a tenant, and essentially what that's doing is it's creating an app registration in your Entra ID that links the Veeam Data Cloud service to your Microsoft 365 and Entra ID, so we can begin protecting it and setting you up for recovery in the future. So what I'll do is I'll click into my tenant in particular, and now what we're going to load into is the dashboard of the tenant. So even if I have multiple tenants, I'm still right now only looking at one tenant. We don't, the data between the tenants do not cross over. They can be stored at different locations and have different retention periods. So everything at the tenant level is going to be separated from others. Our dashboard is going to give us a quick overview of how many accounts we're protecting, how many are unprotected, when our last backup took place, what the status of that was. This solution does also have unlimited storage. However, we do show you your backup storage usage over time on a month-to-month basis. And not to say, not to point out that you're using this much storage. However, it's there so you know what your change rate is over time, as well as if you needed to go into any conversations about cost avoidance, it'll be great information to have to show the rate of your data growth, how much is being consumed, and comparing that to other models where it's a per gigabyte cost. Below that, you're going to see license activity and Microsoft 365 storage usage from the M365 console that we bring into this view for admins to see. And from here, you can tell whether or not in the last 7, 30, or 90 days, users are actually logging in using their licensing. It could be a good indicator if a lot of licenses are not being used, that they're either users that need to go through the decommissioning process and licenses be reclaimed or reassigned. So that's going to be a good cost savings indication there. And then also top 5 storage users from a backup admin's perspective. If I'm in here every day watching or looking at this, I'm going to know who my top 5 are. And all of a sudden, if I log in tomorrow and all of a sudden Mark at the bottom here is now at the top, I'm going to start questioning, how did you get that much data? Is there something malicious taking place? Or is this something as innocent as putting all your cat videos mistakenly into your OneDrive and now it's all synced out to the cloud? Things like that can be easily identified from this view and investigated, and hopefully corrected very soon. Below that is going to be your audit activity. So this is going to audit any access to any of your backup data that has taken place. This log does not expire or is not truncated after a period of time. It's here for the life of subscription. In fact, if you wanted to see all of the activity under management on the left navigation, if you click activity, it takes you into that log specifically, where you can search by user, object, or filter by action to see how much of what type of action is taking place, who's taking action on that, and on what object or objects. So good visibility here from a security perspective, especially when dealing with critical data and monitoring to make sure that none of that critical data is exposed via being downloaded or restored to a different location and then potentially taken elsewhere. All right, moving on to notifications, we do know that multiple admins may be working within the console. You could have admins in here, you could have delegated users like help desk or service desk. And one of the things when multiple people are usually working in a solution and looking for logs and notifications of their tasks is that it may be difficult to see where everything that I'm doing is at. Without having to sort and filter. So what this does is it provides every single user an isolated area where they can see all the tasks that they have kicked off. If they happen to kick off a download in the background, once that task completes, they're going to get a link on this screen that says your download is completed. Here's the link to your download. By the way, it will expire within 48 hours. So act quick, get your data, and then move on. So this is going to keep things clean between users. Reports are going to allow you to generate reports at any time based on any of the information you see within the console. This is going to export either PDFs, Excel sheets, or comma-separated value files based on the type of information you export. Today is mailbox protection report. Shortly, we will start seeing more types of reports come in here, aligning all the workloads with the same type of reports like OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. But then if you do need to export that audit log or that activity report on a daily basis, well, you can do it ad hoc here at any time, or you can also schedule that report to get delivered to a mailbox or user at any time. So it could be a security team's group mailbox, for example, can get a report of this every day so they can review the audits and ensure nothing malicious is taking place. All right, we'll come back to search after we cover restore. But before we go into restore, let's talk about the backup policies, because with the Veeam Data Cloud, you're going to get something that's pretty unique in a cloud or backup as a service for Microsoft 365 perspective. Veeam Data Cloud provides 2 capabilities which are going to serve a wide variety of use cases when it comes to recovery. The first type of capability is provided through Microsoft Backup Storage APIs, and Veeam calls those express policies. When we create express policies, they are going to be based on the workload. So Outlook, OneDrive, or SharePoint. And this policy can be created very simply by providing a name, optional description, and then selecting what you want to protect. In this case, I've selected Outlook as the workload. And I can go into this and I can either go with the entire organization or I can be specific about who I want to protect. It's not uncommon for our customers to license several of their users with the premium offering to provide them with this capability, especially because of prioritization or criticality of those users' data in terms of recovery time objectives or recovery point objectives. So I can select a few users to protect with this, or if I wanted a little more dynamic capability, I would protect something like maybe my sales and marketing team and my professional services team. What that's going to allow me to do is once those groups are selected, when the backups run, they're going to unpack the users of those groups and then back them up individually. So what that's going to allow you to do is in the future, as part of your onboarding, offboarding workflows, if you add a user to a group, they're automatically going to get backed up. If you remove a user from a group, they will automatically be removed from the backup. So it keeps things simple and keeps it so your admins are not spending too much time managing backups. When you're done, you click Save. Once the policy gets created, it will start running, and it's designed to run every 10 minutes. And the greatest thing about this is it does not disrupt anything that you have going on in your Microsoft 365 environment. Now, on the other side of that is going to be the Flex policy, which is based off of the Graph API and more traditional APIs that Microsoft has in place for data protection and recovery. Now, this is going to excel really well for the use cases where granularity comes into play and you need to recover individual items like a single email or a group of emails, documents, or even folders from SharePoint sites and OneDrive. So in order to create those policies, we're going to select the Flex policy, and this is what's also going to align with your compliance requirements for retention. So based on the retention needs, if the compliance team specified that Exchange data needs to be retained for 7 years, then we'll create a new policy, call it Exchange, for example, and then choose the repository that matches my retention period. So that's going to be my 7-year retention period for this backup. And then we're going to choose object or objects that we want to protect. Now, we do recommend with these types of policies that the workloads be broken out into their own backup policies, because Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams may all have different retention periods. So this makes it very customizable and very flexible for your needs. So by clicking on backup the following objects, we're now able to make selections based on what we want to protect. Now, starting from the top, and this is an Exchange policy, so we can go as granular as on a per user basis, who we want to protect and what we want to protect. So if this is an Exchange policy, we say mailbox and mailbox archive. We'll turn off OneDrive and personal sites and save that. Again, if you want it to be a little more dynamic, and say you license all your users who have M365, you can choose all company, because everyone who gets hired gets added to the all company and everyone who leaves gets removed from the all company. And then we'll choose to just back up the user's mailboxes. Now that's going to give you the most hands-off experience in terms of using groups. Now, if you want a true hands-off experience, partial organization skips the steps of adding individual users or even groups, and just basically says that anything that's a mailbox or an archive mailbox, just back it up. This is also going to include your shared mailboxes. So anytime any of those get created, they'll automatically get added to the policy, and on the next time the backup runs, they will be processed. Once you've made your selections, including any exclusions you have to make, you click Create. Once the policy is created, you can either start it manually or it will run at a designated time later in the day. And typically, from what we've seen, it's around 5:30 p.m. on a local time on a daily basis. So if you want to run it immediately, just click on the policy and start it. Not the same for the Express policies. They automatically run. They're always active, as you can see on the right here. And they will run, look for updates every 10 minutes. Now, once your policies have been in place and your backups have been running, if you click on any of the policies, you're going to see the logs at the bottom, which allow you to either filter the logs to show just the jobs that ran with failures or with warnings, things like that. Or you can click on the individual logs and go into detail and then further search through the logs or filter again, or even download the log for offline review. Once our policies are in place and backups are taking place and we've got data collected and protected, we're going to now focus on restoring data when the need arises. So from an operational standpoint, Remember the delegated groups that we gave access into the solution to do restores. So when they log in to restore and process any of those tickets received from end users to recover anything in Outlook, OneDrive, SharePoint, or Teams, this is what they're going to see. They're going to see the restore tab. They're going to come into here. As soon as you click on restore, as a matter of fact, create session is going to be created in the audit log, tracking my activity at this point. If I need to find a user who's lost some email, I can search for that user and remove everyone else. Once I expand the user, it's going to open up to look just like Outlook. Makes it very easy for browsing the data that you need to recover. So if it's in the inbox, I need to recover a couple of emails. I just click on the inbox, the items show up on the right. I'll make my selections, and then I choose to restore the data. Options to restore the data are going to be original location with advanced options. Typically, we don't change any of these unless you don't want the restored items marked as unread. You're always going to need to do either changed items or missing items, otherwise nothing will get restored. And then additionally, if the option is enabled for the user that's accessing this, they can restore to another user's mailbox. So they can restore to a manager's mailbox into a different folder, or a shared mailbox, or even their own mailbox into a different folder to keep things easily identifiable when they're restored. And the last thing, of course, is download in the background, which is going to allow you to download that data and take or package it up as either a PST or a zip file. Now, for going back out a step from doing the actual restore, if we're still clicked onto the user's mailbox, we do see that the restore button says selected mailbox. If we click on this, if you have both policies protecting the same user, you're going to see a restore method. So the express full restore is going to take, it's going to use that copy that's created by the Microsoft Backup Storage API and use that as a restore point, as well as the data to restore. Now this works really well if the mailbox is very large, and we're talking tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands or more messages within the mailbox. If recovering individual items or a very small mailbox and there's no criticality in terms of time it gets recovered, you can go ahead and use the Flex Restore, which is basically going to use the Graph API. And that's going to put it back into the original location. Again, original location, other user's mailbox, or you can download the entire mailbox as a PST. So different processing options depending on the use case and level of access that's provided for the user who's logged in. Now, from a OneDrive and SharePoint perspective, very similar restore capabilities. However, with the fact that OneDrive and SharePoint do store a lot of documents, and document versioning is tracked within the two, you can actually, from a document level, even restore files to a specific version that has been recorded. So, for example, if I have this Excel file and I worked on it all day today, made 20 different versions of it through updates and changes, and I back it up tonight, tomorrow, if I need to recover a specific version, I can go into here and click on the version number. All previous versions will be listed. I make my selection, hit OK, and then I can start my restore for this document. One thing to call out also with the restoration of documents in either of these cases for SharePoint or OneDrive is that Veeam is not designed to destroy data or delete data. It's designed to protect your data and make it recoverable. And with that in mind, anytime you want to restore a document that exists already, you don't have to move it anywhere. You don't have to delete it first. If you want to keep a copy of it, but you just want a previous version, for example, or older copy restored to refer to, what you can do is just select the document and restore that document to the original location. And what that's going to do is it's going to prepend the word restored in front of that restored document. So once I restore this and it completes, and then I back this data up again tonight, I'll see that there's another file with the exact same name as this one selected. However, it will stay restored twice in front of it. So anytime you are questioning, does the data exist there? Have you moved it? You can feel safe knowing that when the data is actually recovered, it's not going to overwrite that existing data. When you're doing recoveries with SharePoint, you have multiple options. So for example, if I need to recover this backpack department SharePoint site, I could have a number of use cases. One, it could be the data's gone, or something's broken with the site, and we just want a copy of it restored back to the way it was. So that's one use case. There's another use case where I either have a subsite or the site itself, and maybe my developers don't have a sandbox to develop against. What I can actually do here is I can restore this selected site to a site alias, which gives me the opportunity to automatically create a new target site with the same site and data for my developers to code against and make changes to before they submit for production changes. So additional use cases here, not just around recovery, but also around making critical changes to your environment that may impact users as you're making those changes. And then also from a file and folder level within SharePoint, you can also restore those across sites. So from one SharePoint site to another. So a lot of different options available for recovery here. Now from a team's perspective, if you do back up a team, we're also going to back up the SharePoint site that backs the team as well automatically. So for example, my retail site will show up under SharePoint. So if we click back into SharePoint, my retail team will show up in SharePoint backups. So that if I did need to restore anything from the site itself, I can go into SharePoint and then I can expand the retail team and find the documents I'm looking for and recover that. If something happens to the team that's being used actively for channel posts, tabs, documents, everything like that, I can recover the team, and I can even do things like fix permissions on teams where the permissions have been broken. So that's very powerful here in terms of being able to recover a team back to its previous state or a point in time. But outside of that, we do have the ability to protect the channels themselves with the posts, making these posts recoverable, or you can download the post as an HTML file and send it off to your legal team or your auditors, for example. Any files that are stored within the SharePoint document library that you need to restore from this perspective, you can also restore directly here. And then any tabs that you do protect will get recovered along with or individually, or you can recover it as part of the entire team. Now, so that's going to be more of your operational day-to-day use cases. Now, when we're talking about, a large-scale incident involving massive data deletion or even corruption of data through encryption, maybe, OneDrive got encrypted through ransomware or SharePoint sites got encrypted. This bulk restore is designed to leverage the Microsoft Backup Storage API exclusively to do those bulk recoveries at speed and at scale. So what that's going to enable you to do is recover a large amount of data very quickly in the event of a catastrophic data loss. And what we'll do in that instance is once an incident has been identified and we get our list, we come into here, we select users, mailboxes, and OneDrives that may have been affected. We can also recover groups. So if you didn't want to, if you had the all users, all company protected, you could choose the all company and recover all their mailboxes and OneDrives. Select that, and then also any SharePoint sites that have been affected by the incident can be selected and recovered. So we'll just choose a few of these here. So essentially, what I've done here is built a shopping cart for a single job for recovery here. Keep in mind that each job that you run has a maximum concurrency of 1,000 objects. So I can do 1,000 mailboxes, 1,000 OneDrives, or 1,000 SharePoint sites at once, which is something that you're not going to be able to do with the Graph API, because that API does have limitations in terms of speed and throughput, and API calls within a set interval. So this is going to be your best bet for large-scale recoveries. Now going into the search capabilities, I wanted to save this for last because it kind of piggybacks on the restore capabilities. It, in fact, leverages that. So anytime you need to search for something within the backups, you can click on search. We have two types of search, general and advanced. General is going to be more designed to, I need to find something from a general high-level perspective, such as I need to search within Outlook in my mailbox for the word, anything with the word Veeam in it. So I'll enter that information and I'll search, and it'll take some time to return that data, and it will limit it to the first 500 results. So if you do need something a little more specific than that, that's where advanced search comes in. So advanced search is going to kind of go back to that example of where legal comes to you and says, 3 years ago, we had these 4 individuals talking about this one topic in Outlook or via email. Can you produce a list of all those items for us and export it so we can review it? You can absolutely do something like that with this advanced search capability. So how I would do that is I would say, for example, we'll use me as an example. So we'll just say, look in my mailbox where I am the name in the to field. So it contains my name. I can spell. That's a list. And then I also want to say this was received between a period of time. So let's say between January 20th of this year and today. So add that to the list. And then also the other thing that my legal team gave me was the subject contained Microsoft. Any variation of Microsoft, as long as it contains Microsoft in the subject, I want you to find it. And what we'll do is we'll start our search. This will take some time to actually run, but when it does, you're going to get results like what you see here below this, where everything that contains what you're looking for is here together, where you'll be able to select it and restore those selected items. Again, you're going to get all options to recover, including back to the original location. So just be aware of that. You will have the option to download everything as either a PST or a zip file. And then at that point, once you've downloaded it, you can hand it over to your legal team or audit team and be good to go. From this screen, you're going to be able to see how your licenses are being used over time, whether they're growing in usage or they're shrinking in usage, depending on people coming and leaving. And then also, if you need to export a list of all your protected users, you can export that list here, compare it against your Microsoft 365 licenses, just to make sure that you're protecting everyone. And then also, if you happen to go over your licenses and wondering how that happened, you can leverage this list to show the differences as well. So a shortcut to get into Entra ID would be under workloads on the main left navigation. Keep in mind whatever services or workloads you do protect with Veeam Data Cloud will list out on the left here. So you don't have to go back to that main screen every time. So from Entra ID, if I click on there, again, it's going to show me my tenants that are listed. One thing you're going to notice is when you onboard your Entra ID tenant, your backups are going to be established. Your retention period is going to be established, as well as the location of where your backups are stored is going to be established. And as we click into the tenant itself, because we do that during onboarding, what you're not going to see here is a backup policies tab. Once my tenant is protected, there's no way to go into here and manipulate that backup policy at all. The data is going to be protected like clockwork every 24 hours. We're going to get a protection badge. We're going to get when our last backup and oldest backups were, what the status was. We're going to see a total count of the objects we protect. Today, the objects that are protected by Veeam Data Cloud for Entra ID are going to be your applications, roles, users, groups, conditional access policies, administrative units, Intune policies, and organization contacts, with the addition of your Entra ID logs, which are technically a separate backup that's created. So you have 2 backup jobs that run on a daily basis, one for the objects and one for the logs. And just like M365, we have the audit log at the bottom here, where you're going to see the most recent restore sessions, as well as be able to click into the activity and get the session details as needed. Going into objects, this is going to be where you're going to do recoveries. So we don't have the backup policies tab. We go straight into, I need to recover something. Now we're going to see the objects just like the workloads in M365, but for Entra ID listed at the top. These are all the different objects we protect today. If any new objects are added, you go into settings and permissions, and then you'll see a new line with the new object that has been added or the enhancement that has been made. You turn it on, we'll start backing it up on the next run. And these are every 24 hours. So back to object recovery. So one of the most interesting things about this solution is If I select all my users, even though I have not deleted any, maybe a couple have been deleted in the last 24 hours and I don't know who they are, but I do know I need to restore users. I can select all the users and hit restore. So I'll make a selection here. Optionally, you can choose a point in time, but we're going to go next, and we're going to look at the restore options at this point. So by default, any objects that already or still exist within Entra ID that we try to restore are going to get skipped. So it's not going to disrupt anything that's going on. It's not going to replace an existing object or use a unique ID for that matter for restoring from backups. The other option is to overwrite or do a full object restore, which is going to be a little more destructive. And typically you want to do that if you don't trust the data that's in Entra ID, but you do trust your backup data. What's good about how we protect users is we do not back up passwords at all. So anytime you need to restore a user object, you're going to need to set a temporary default password for all the users. If this was one user, you can set a single password, but because we have several users selected, there is a built-in password generator that will generate different passwords for every user. Once you've made your selections or inputs, you can export this list because users are going to have to get that password somehow. So you can export this list, hand it to each user as they're restored so they can log in. And then when they log in, they're going to be requested to change that password at first log on. So it's immediately going to invalidate that temporary password once they make this change. Here's what's really cool is relationships. So when I restore all these users, it's going to look at the relationships for these users. Are they parts of groups? Do they have access to applications? Do they have roles associated with them? Are they in different admin units? And as these users are getting restored, they're going to, if you keep the relationships, all of that's going to get put back intact with the user, making your recovery a much simpler experience, especially at scale. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed with this restore, knowing that I'm going to skip everything if they exist. I'm not going to overwrite any of the existing objects. If I hit restore, this will kick off that restore job, and it will run through completion. However, when I get the results at the end, it's going to show me warnings, and basically the warnings are going to be, could not restore this because it already exists. None of the passwords are going to change. Nothing's going to change about it because nothing was missing. So that's going to be from an object level when you do a recovery. Now, there are going to be other use cases that you're going to have for doing any type of recovery. And one of them is going to be around comparing and restore. So if someone goes and makes a change from a property level, it could be a conditional access policy. It could be an Intune policy. It could be users. Addresses could change. Roles could change inadvertently. So you want to be able to revert that back to what it was. What you can do from the Veeam Data Cloud for Entra ID perspective is you can do compare and restore type of rollbacks for metadata. So for example, if I had this policy, this conditional access policy that someone went in and made several changes to, I can do a compare and restore. And what this is going to do is Veeam is going to read the data that's in Entra ID, the configuration for this policy within Entra ID, and it's also going to be reading the data from the last backup by default. You can also choose the restore point you want to go back to. Maybe something changed a few days ago. You want to see what those changes are. But it's going to default to the latest change. Okay, through that compare and restore, what's going to happen is the software is going to read the configuration for that conditional access policy within Entra ID, and it's also going to read the data or the configuration within the backup. It's going to do a comparison, and by default only show you changes that actually did occur. Now, in this case, there's nothing changed about this policy, so it's not going to show any differences. But if you do want to see, all the different properties that are protected, you can actually turn off the switch, and it will list out everything that we're gathering in terms of properties and configurations with a conditional access policy. Noting that only things that have changed will be recoverable. So you won't really be able to recover anything at this point because nothing's different. Now, when it comes to Entra ID logs, the reason why it's important to protect these logs is because by default, whether you have a P1 or a P2 license for Entra ID, those logs are only going to be kept or retained for 30 days. There are other ways to extend that. You can export the logs to a SIM or to Sentinel, for example. But if you don't have that handy, what you can also do is you can back that data up or those logs up with the Veeam Data Cloud for Entra ID. What that's going to do is it's going to create a point-in-time copy of these logs that spans the entire retention that you set for your policy, so that if someone happened to get into your environment and cause damage, and you're now trying to discover what happened and who it was, these logs are going to come in very handy for your security team when they go to investigate. And typically, on average, it takes up to 200 days before something is identified. By that time, if you don't have those logs saved off somewhere, you're not going to be able to go back further than 30 days, which makes recovery and identification of these events even more difficult. And again, if at any time you want to see what your settings were when you did onboarding, you can go into the settings on the general tab. It'll tell you what region we're in, what my retention period is, and how often my backups are running. And then also, again, just wanted to reiterate, as new capabilities are added, new objects are protected by Veeam Data Cloud, you'll be able to go into permissions and turn those on if you choose to back them up. And that will do it for today's demo. Please leave any questions in the comments. I'd be happy to get some questions and help answer some of them. With that said, thank you for watching and have a great day.